much for coming to March Open Studio 2025. Been doing it for a few years now. Hopefully I don't run out of ideas. So anytime you have an idea and you want me to show something or talk about something, feel free, just send me a message. I do get my ideas from classes, workshops, things that I've read, things that I'm doing. So I'm always up for something new. So what you see in front of you are just some things that I'm going to use today to talk about the topic. And the topic today is, oops, I did put yes, I have myself on spotlight. The topic today is really how colors can interact in quiet spots of paintings. Now, of course, that would imply also that they're going to interact in those active parts. And I'm going to explain to you what I mean by quiet spots. I have a couple of examples of paintings that are in progress, and sometimes my paintings in progress actually sit there for a while. But this is one that I just had the very basic, simple scene set. So there are quite a few quiet areas. So when I'm talking about quiet, I'm talking about areas that really the values are pretty much the same in one area. Okay, maybe slight shifts. Okay, slight shifts in there, slight shifts in there, some areas that pop. Up here, not so quiet. There's a lot more activity because there's going to be in this area, this mass that's right here, there's going to be a value shift from something that's middle dark to something that's light, and that includes the water. That's clearly reflecting the light sky. So this area here, in my eyes, is a little bit more active when we think of our value range. This area here, that area there, is definitely quieter because the value range is less. So now that you've seen that, I'm going to talk about what that value range means. And this is what you want to consider when you're painting is, having any sort of these grayscales works out, fine. This one I like because it does have these holes in it. I have another one that I like that I actually used a hole puncher and put the holes in it so I could hold it up to something and I could look through that and see where do I think that it falls. Okay, and you move it around just to get an idea. We think this is really light sky, but how light really is that sky? And when you squint your eyes and look at this area right here, that can tell you about, and this is all relative, because what happens is there are more than 10 values out there. And we have a value scale that's just, encapsulated it into 10 values. So we have to make a decision on what it's the closest. So if I look through, I'm looking at this blue. Oh, I should have tacked that guy up. I'm looking at this blue. Okay, so if I squint my eyes and I look at this, I say, does this blue look darker than this? Does it look about the same as this, or does it look lighter? And then I would do the same on either side, trying to discern which really is the one that is the best value for that blue. Same could be said for our darker areas. And you would just hold that up, pick a relative. I'm looking at this area of green and reddish color right there. I would hold this up and I would do the same sort of thing. And I would see if I look through here, look at how light that looks. So I know that that's too dark of a value. So I'm going to shift over here. I'm going to squint my eyes. I'm going to say, oh, that looks pretty darn close. I'm going to shift it one more time and look. And it's like, ooh, this looks like it's lighter than that. So that tells me that this is roughly an approximation of the value for that. So when you know the values of the different shapes that you have, and a lot of people start with their photographs, which is, a great way of doing it. Sometimes you wind up reimagining your photograph and you shift the values a bit because a photograph isn't always accurate in terms of things that artists are considering. So when I look at a painting, What I'm doing is I'm saying, what is the value range? So there's two things. One is the value zone, and that is or the value, I should say, that is the value of the object. And then the other one is the value range, and the value range means, is my painting going to have values from white, meaning it's the very lightest, closest to white that I can get, all the way up to black. So that's a range of 1 to 10, or is my range going to be condensed, and is it going to be a range that covers part of this value scale? So when you're looking at photographs, really consider where that range falls. If you have a lot of shadows on a bright day, you're probably going to have some darker values. Don't be deceived by those photographs, though. They're not black. Those shadows are not black. And the same with a very bright day. There are very few things out there that are going to be white. These are the two colors that I often just do not even consider, because very few things are going to be pure white or pure black. So these guys are the most important ones. And if you think of your values, if you get used to thinking of the values of what you're looking at in your color photograph or in real life, whether it's a still life, plein air, any sort of resource you're using for your ideas, is to think of the value range and the value of the objects. But today, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be talking about value zones. And value zones, this is my interpretation of value zones. Value zones, wow. Okay, so for the value zones, what we're doing is we're looking at an area that potentially has several values in it, but they're all acting together in unison for that mass, that object, that shape, whatever it is. These guys are all working together. So a value zone means it's not just one value. It's not your value range of the whole painting, but it's one specific area, mass, shape, that you see several values, but they work together. So I'm going to have an example here that I'm going to show you. I got to get back to this painting. I started it so long ago, so I decided I'm going to use this for an example, so that way. Okay, so value range. Oh my gosh, Betsy. Value range. Wow. It's got quite a wide value range. There's lots of lights in here. Okay, there's lots of darks. But I know in reality, this area here is not as dark as it shows up in the photograph. The light area was very light, but it's certainly, I can see colors in there. Okay, so it's not a washed out white, nor do I have a black. So I'm looking at my value range right there, which is pretty accurate. It's a full value range. Now, if I look at an individual shape that's in here, I'm going to take an obvious one. We see this shape right here, which is, this is the looking at a tank that a friend owns, a fish tank, which is like absolutely stunning. So if we look at this shape right here, this shape here has a variety of values within it. Okay, so in order to create this shape, it is going to have values that go from pretty light. I would not make it super light to start with, because you want that light to pop at the end. So I'd probably start it more like down here rather than starting with something that's really light. And it does get really dark, but again, I know it's not that black, so I'm probably going to stick with that object in a value zone around this way right here. Within that value zone, I see two shapes. I'm going to draw right in it. Okay, so I'm going to go around everything that I see that I would say is in my light zone. And I'm going to draw right around this fish, which the fish I don't think is going to stay in the painting there. I'm going to move the fish someplace else. So I have a dark zone right here, and I have a light zone right here. And those are the quiet spots that I'm going to be talking about, okay? So this whole object had a value range. I think I was using the word zone and I didn't mean to, sorry. It has a value range, this object, probably from here to probably here. I'm gonna kick that off at the end, maybe with highlights over here. So that's its range, just in that one little area. It has one zone that has lighter values in it. It has another zone that has darker values in it. And those are the quiet areas of paintings that we can actually take and, um, create some fun and activity with the lights and the darks that are in there, rather than treating that as such a flat object. It's rounded, it's curved, it's this lovely piece of a, oh my gosh, my mind's gone blank. Anyway, what do you call it? It's not a reef. Uh, anyway, it's alive. So, yeah, let me move this to the side.
Coral. Is it
It did so.
coral?
Coral, thank you so much. I just love it when the brain just not pull it up. Anyway, a piece of coral, a living, breathing piece of coral. You can do this with any of these objects. Look at this one in here. This has a lesser degree because it doesn't have the super dark, but if I was going to take that, there's its dark zone right in there, and then there's its light zone. This area right in here, we can see the light that's captured around the edge. So if you try thinking of things in terms of their value, the value range, and then the value zone that it falls in. I'm not going to be working on this painting, but it was a good one to show an example of because this is what I started with. Okay. Again, I'm not going to work on this today, but I wanted to see the progression. So what happened when I was doing this underpainting, and this underpainting is with acrylic inks, anything that fell in the light zone, I wound up painting with a lighter value acrylic ink. Some of them had more intensity and some of them were warmer. The darker zones, again, acrylic inks, and that's done with a slate blue. And they pretty much, I said the same. There's a couple of violets that are in there. So when I squint my eyes, I can see the zones right there. I can see where my lights are and where my darks are. So what do we do when we have an object like that? Or any object? Think of a wall. If you're in one of my classes on palette, there's several photographs that are in there that have really good examples of how you can take an area that looks like we know it's a white wall, but that white wall has a multitude of colors in it that fall in the same value range. I have to be careful with my range, my zone. I'm interchanging them. Two color wheels, you've seen these before. This is your regular triactic color wheel that's based on what we all learn in school with your primary colors, red, yellow, blue, secondary, orange, green, and violet. The ones that have a tint on one side and shade on the other, shade for dark, tint for light, really are handy because you can actually see the way the color actually dissipates and gets muted out as it moves away from the pure color. Okay, so it's going to either go darker or lighter. I'll refer to that in a minute. And the analogous color wheel, of which I said I was going to find out why the analogous color wheel does not put orange in as a secondary color. And it is because when they began printing in color, they realized that they could not make all colors with just red, yellow, and blue. So what they did is they changed it to include these colors right here. And they're actually very different than the triacted. It includes main colors that are both primary and secondary. So that is why. Okay, I'm gonna push that to the side. Okay, so for this, what I just want to show you is some ways that you can actually play with your colors. And this is really more about an exercise than a painting. So what we're gonna do is I have already chosen some colors here. I've got this orange surface here. This is Art Spectrum. I do not know what color this is, but they have a couple of oranges, and this is their one that's slightly muted, but it is lighter than this deeper russety one that they have. I'm going to break this up into bars, and I'm going to show you how these colors wind up changing as they're on this color. Because the color that you put underneath, so for instance, let's go back to this. This is very local color. I have blue for the sky, green for the trees, blue again here, some violets are in here and some other colors, but you know, they tend to be pretty tame colors. The ones that I used for this, I really exaggerated, and I have popped up the colors a lot. And I have another one over here, which here's one, another one, popped up the colors, okay? Not necessarily local color, but not too far afield, okay? With the violets back there, reds and oranges. So when you're painting, the same thing here, this is all painted by value. So each of these areas, the lighter areas, the darker areas, are done by value. So let's get to business here. Some of that's repetitive. Most of you already know that, so I'm not going to linger. But does anyone have a question about any of that? Because I'm making an assumption most of you know that, and it was just a little intro thing. Okay, here we go. All right, so I want to say, how can I take one area and I'm going to see how much I can enliven it. And I want to be consider whether I want in this area that is quiet to have any little nuggets of excitement, or do I want it to be rather tame? So I'm going to start out because it's this color. The most logical thing based on our color wheel is to take colors that actually have orange in it. So we have yellow and we have red. So yellow, red, and orange we're going to start with because that's the easy way. Now I have variety down here, and the majority of them. Okay, we're gonna now just as I'm going to start with the darker color down here, the lighter color up here. I'm working this way, so hopefully my shadow is not going to cover it. So here, let's get this down here. I'm going to get this orange, and I'm just going to have a nice little reddish color to it. I'm just going to come on up. It's going to go up part way. I'm going to let it just fade away. I want to make sure that the color shows through. I've brought that up. What I'm now going to do is I'm going to bring in some of another orange. Oh, right. Hang on a second. I was going to put the colors over here to the side. That's why I had this right here. Okay, this is the color that I just used. This is the color I'm using next. Okay, they're going to change slightly. As I go up, it's going to become lighter. But I still want this orange to show through. So I'm just going to make this kind of a mark. It's a very, of course, there's something behind that, so it's not lying flat. So I'm just going to slightly bring that up. I'm going to bring in my next color orange. This one has a little bit more of an orangey color to it. You can see that. Again, very light strokes, kind of like a scumbling. I want the color underneath to show through. We go to and get lighter as they go up. Oh, it's starting to feel very orangey. And we'll go back and forth on that. And because remember I had that color that's underneath, but what I'm doing is I'm coming in, just dragging that up lightly. I feel more like there's more of a line there. So when you do this, just drag it down a little bit because you want it to be like a gradual feel. So I'm gradually putting that up. Let's go for even a lighter, brighter one. Back and forth. Being very careful not to color in this. So I'm doing pretty light strokes here. And again, I'm going to come down and I'm just going to have that fade. And we have one that's pretty bright and light. And drag that. And we're going to end with this one here, which is very much more of a yellow. And we're going to just drag that this way and bring that up. I can still see some of that orange that's underneath. I'm just going to go back and forth because that yellow is a little strong, so I can go over it because I want it to keep a orangey feel. Any of them I feel I can come back in with the color that's just underneath it, just to knock that out. Because your goal here is just to create a gradual blend of how one color changes. And we used, this is really the safest way to do it. We have an orange paper, we're putting orange colors on it. We've varied it, we've kept it at fairly close range in terms of its value. We've got colors that are light and colors that fall in the, almost medium. Let's double check this. Yeah, wow, this guy's probably falling somewhere around there. That guy there, he's probably falling somewhere around there. Yeah, definitely not the white. So we've got a reduced range, but we're still able to show something that changes. So if you imagine that you are painting something that has that ebb and flow because of the way light is hitting it, treat it as if it's a unit and you're trying to create a gradual change just by having a mixture of colors.
Oh, my gloves in this.
Oh, does somebody have their yeah, just make sure you mute yourself. Hang on a second. There, I got it. Okay. Now, that's tame. Let's do something that's a little bit, it's still a quiet part of the painting, but we want it to have a little bit more excitement to it. And how would we go about that? Well, the easiest thing is we come in and we put its complementary color behind it. So I'm going to start, this is not a very dark color here. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to test my colors here. And this one here, if I squint my eyes and look at it, the blue looks like it's slightly lighter than it. So let's try this blue right here. That blue there, oh geez, that blue there looks like it is about the same. Now, if you can't tell when it's next to one another, just let me make this a little bit bigger for you here. You can't tell, make that bigger. You can take and you can put a mark right on it. Let's make that just a little bit bigger. Let's put this one here. Okay, and you squint your eyes. Oh, and look at how much he stands out here. Okay, it almost looks like a hole. This one here, it's not exact, but it's pretty darn close. This one's kind of wavering when I look at it. I don't see a distinct edge around the outside. This one I do. So this one's closer. So that's what I'm going to do because I want to start with a value. The value of this was about the same. Okay, I want to start with a blue that's now about the same. So I'm just going to put shock of blue down here. And at this point, I'm not as concerned about saving the orange because I'm going to either have an underpainting of blue underneath it, or I'm going to have a dry underpainting, which is what I'm doing now, is when you just go in and you tone it and you don't wet it. And you can just fill in the surface. And this art spectrum fills in very, very easy. So it's nice. Just use the side of your finger. And that's a pretty bright color. look at how much that is just like popping out. It's popping out one because it's also on orange. Orange and blue are opposite. So we're trying to create something that's got like a little bit more excitement to it, so that we're going to take the exact same colors and we're going to do the exact same thing on this side. So now I have to pick up the right colors. So let me double check them over here. That's going to drive me crazy. Sorry. There's a rogue tack back thing. There we go. I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm just going to come in. You're going to be able to see the marks a little bit more on this one. Just using the side. A little streaky at first. Flattened it out a bit, but see, I didn't want to be able to see, don't forget, I still want to be able to see that blue. Through here, I can still see this orange, so here, I still want to see the blue. This is my next color. This one I know I had trouble with, so let me just go like that. Smooth the color out. If you're finding you're getting like a strokey thing, just a matter of just coming in and just going like that. Come by. This is a Mount Vision. These are all soft pastels, by the way. I'm gonna have this red. This is what I love doing stuff like this, you know, it's just, I just find it really exciting to see what happens with the colors. So this guy's a little, I'm gonna drag him a little bit over the other one. I'm going soft, I'm going like that. Okay, very softly coming in. Trying to keep it on par with where it is here, exact same thing on both sides. Just bring that down a little bit, the same way I did. And still have that blue behind it. I had this orange, yep. Going back and forth. So what's happening when we do this is now it's not just a color interaction within a same hue family. We now have the interaction of that opposite. It's contrasting color here. Then we have this one right here. So these complementary color mixtures here. Oops, this guy's a little rough. Smooth them out. And through. So if you can imagine on my, just come up just a little bit with that guy. I have this lovely bright off. You can imagine on this, the scene that I have underneath the water is the way you can get a little bit of a, hopefully I will get it like a little bit of a flicker of the way the light winds up changing when it goes from a darker area to a lighter area. And did I just do that? Which one did I just do? Did I just do this one? Yes, I just, oh geez, I've lost track of what I was doing because I was talking. Let me just come up a little bit. And then I had this yellow. I'm gonna cover the yellow just a little bit more because what I want to do is this is really about the oranges. And remember I came in with the orange on top, so put that yellow down and now I'm just gonna just drag some of that other orange that I had there. And I just play this little dance. It's gonna be far more obvious. It's more obvious on this than it is on this because that orange actually acts with the oranges I'm putting on top. The blue actually creates this lovely contrast, but in doing that, it also means I want to go back. I don't want to have any ridges where one layer creates a line, and I'm looking there to see how I'm doing there. Well, let's get this darker one down here. And fill this in. Now, one of the things happens when you have something like that, it's coming, this area here looks much better in real life than it does on the screen. There's a lot of really pretty colors that are in here. Let me just take one moment and I am going to just see if I can adjust the saturation to see if it, let me adjust it one more time. Because the saturation of the video, that's kind of made it a little bit too goofy looking because it's not really that bright. So let me just go back one. Okay, I think we're just gonna have to leave it there. You'll see it in the photograph, but there's this lovely modeling that's happening from one of these layers right in here. See, so see this little touch. The point of this that I'm trying to show is that you leave whatever color is behind showing through. This winds up, this looks lighter on the screen than it does in real life. Let me come in here. Let me just, maybe it's that blue. Blue tends to be should have chosen something other than blue because that can drive me nutty when I'm trying to film or photograph. Blue just comes in. Okay, so both of these have a similar value zone. Okay, we've covered this range that's in here. We're going to use it in one object. They're all working together, but they really are one connects to the next so that they are needed to create like that feeling of some sort of object that has dimension, a curve to it. You know, even if you were doing something that had sunlight falling on it, you know, a wall that has light at one end, not at the other. Another way that you can handle this is you can take and, yes, question? Does someone have a question? Okay. Okay, I'm just gonna come in, I'm just gonna show you what happens if we just do almost like the opposite. We're just gonna come in, this is a dark blue. Okay, we're just gonna come in with this dark blue. And the same idea. If you think of your paintings, you know, and I'm not talking about, you know, you're working spontaneously, don't, you know, don't interrupt that by trying to do exercises, but I'm talking about you've got a little bit of time, you want to paint, but you don't want to start a painting, you don't have a painting to start with, you only have a half an hour, any number of reasons. Do stuff like this. I mean, it's just really, we're going to just push it a little bit here. We've got something that's really dark. So I know if I put this color here, which was my darkest one right here, that's too light because this one here is almost the same color as the paper. And remember, we tested over there with those colors. So let's test again here. That's not going to show up there, so I'm going to put it over here. There's the dark color there. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to say, okay, I want a dark color that goes on there, and I want a dark color that's either going to be a reddish dark color. Squint your eyes and look at that. Oh, it's almost disappearing. That's good, it was supposed to. I could also come in, and I could also come in with a red violet. Okay, red violet, well, they're both pretty. The red violet looks darker. If I look at that, that feels like it is definitely darker than the blue. So we're gonna stick with the red. We can bring the red violet back in again. So I'm just going to put the red at the bottom. We're adding this guy right down here. Because now we're going to expand it a little bit, but we're also using a color that's got like a lot of chroma to it. So I'm going to expand that in here. Only this time what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to go the opposite direction. So now I have that red, I have that violet. That violet is a little bit darker. Okay, we did dark to light. Now I'm doing dark down here. We're going to go lighter, but we're going to have a whole different feel because I'm going to pick up these same colors that I had before. Started darker. Let me double check. letting that blue show through, putting it on in a really modelly sort of way. Check over there, your pastel stick doesn't always look the same as it does on the paper. What's that one?
I really love this one.
Oh, the blue?
Yes, it's beautiful.
Isn't that gorgeous? I know, it's just, I just picked up the same color twice. I'm just. Now, the only thing I did differently is I added a red at the bottom. And I added that violet next to it. Okay, so I wound up with and I'm really thinking of it, I don't know where my brain was. I should have put the violet down first. So I'm gonna put that, go back in, I'm putting the violet down there. That's what I get for trying to think and paint at the same time, think, talk and paint at the same time. So I have the dark, let me get back in. I don't wanna lose that blue that's underneath there. Because I had that blue as a stick, I can always come in and I can always just dabble some of that blue down here because I put the colors on wrong. I meant to put the violet down first. And I put like that in. So now you have a whole different feel. And again, all the same, just added the red and that violet. Let me put the violet over here to the side so you can see it. It's a really pretty red violet. And it's a really nice red. So those two colors change there. So when people are talking about needing like a whole load of different colors to do something, it's your underpainting. Work with your underpainting. Because I didn't need a whole load of colors. I'm granted I'm showing you a range, so I am using all those colors, but I created all different effects. So in one painting, an area, let me go back to a photo, this one right in here. Oh, too bad I didn't. Ah, that would have been a really good idea if I just had a black and white photograph. No, don't have one. I just have this right here. So if you think of it in this painting right here, I do not have to have a ton of different colors. What I need to do is I need to have an underpainting where the dark things are. And I need to have an underpainting where the light things are, and I can also throw in an underpainting with my middle value. And by having that same color, yellow, is going to look different, orange is going to look different on any of these colors, and I can use it in different spots without having to go run and look for a whole load of different colors. So partly I called this quiet, but I haven't really talked a lot about quiet. But what I mean by quiet, and please ask me questions if it's not clear, is how we can take an area that really doesn't have a lot in it. Let me use this as an example. This is the one we just did for the paint along. Okay, so this one here in particular, this was as such a quiet area because it's the light coming in hitting the granite, the shadow over here. There's like 6 colors in here. There's the lighter version of colors in here. So these quiet areas that really don't have the activity of contrasting colors and objects and all that, just these quiet areas really have a little bit of excitement and interest to them because I was totally invested in keeping in that value zone, light colors in here, darker colors in here, and using a variety. There's everything from purple to blue green. There's actually some a darkish like a forest green and some light forest, not forest greens, olive greens in here. Okay, this area here I consider more like the active area because there's actual shapes and shadows, and you're trying to create, the feeling of objects in a shallow bowl. Quiet area, busy area. So those quiet areas, let me pull this, where'd they go? Oh, here it is. So here we go. We look at this. You know, all the different colors that you could put in this sky, in these clouds. Similar values. You can have it gradate, same way you did here, by changing slightly the value. So that as the sky's typically darker, farther up into the atmosphere, it gets lighter, sometimes changes color towards the horizon. So you're gonna have that gradation that's happening back there. The clouds, they're picking up color. In here, the greens, it's not going to be all the same green through here. You can vary it, long as you're thinking about what value you want. And the same colors here are going to look different if they're here, especially if you're, you're working with a value shift. This one's a little bit more extreme, but that same sort of idea that happened here, where we change the color that's underneath. What's underneath? This one here, I wasn't really crazy about it, so I just stopped. This began as a plein air, I believe. But anyway, if anyone recognizes it, I think it's Sandy Neck Beach. Colors that go on this orange are going to look very different than the colors that go on the violet. This is a different value than this. So if I want it to be quiet, I'm going to keep with colors that are within this area right here. I'm not going to have the gradation until I start coming closer down here. These same colors are going to start shifting and they can act in here, and then they could go dark like that there. So you could, and not necessarily that I would paint all those trees orange, but that's just an example. So when with this, and I was just using a scumbling stroke, and that scumbling stroke can also be enhanced by, I have it right here, by using a hard pastel. And if, for instance, you found an area in your painting and you really needed to have less of, oh, I have the yellow one here too, less of that. Let's say we're going to take this area right here and you're saying, oh, geez, yeah, I really like the way that blue looks. Oh, I should take a photograph of it first before I do this, because then I can at least, hang on just a second. Okay. It's like, yeah, you know what? That yellow, you're at the painting, you're saying that yellow is not working for me, but I don't really want to get a lot of heavy pastel on there. Okay, this area here, I have yellow, pretty much the same yellow that went down there. This is just a hard pastel. Those were all scumbling. It was all those like little loose marks that I was using. I was not pressing hard. I'm gonna do some feathering. I'm just gonna come in and I am just gonna go back and forth in here. And what this is doing is it's dragging the soft pastel that is there. At the same time that it's dragging it, it's filling in, as you can see, some of that background blue that for some reason you've decided is not working. And the same that can be said for the orange. Oh, let's see what the orange, I was gonna try the orange there. I want to try the orange over here. Okay, this is a bigger stick. I can be a little bit more, again, I'm just doing this pretty lightly. Okay, I'm just doing it super lightly. I'm not pressing hard at all. Or any of this. I used to be very heavy-handed. The more I learned about pastels, the lighter my stroke became. It's not to say that there's anything the matter with having a heavy stroke. You find out what style works best for you. Okay, so yeah, so there, I just feathered that. I didn't have to go in and blend it with my finger. The hard pastel did the work for me. I'm looking there and I'm saying, yeah, it did, but guess what? You really should have some of this color. I didn't go all the way up to that with here. I stopped right about there. So I need, is it this color? Oh, yeah. I'm just gonna come up and I'm just gonna drag a little bit of that over it. See, and that's gonna go right over that hard pastel. And whoops, right over it. And I'm gonna come back in with this orange, I believe I used. And I'm just gonna flick that over it. And you could have left it as the feathering, or you could go in. And doing that, I was able to fill that, fill in some of that blue. I can still see a little of it, and a little bit of it is fine. But just showing you how you can take care and do that. So basically, you're thinking of those areas that are not the main attraction. They're the supporting part of a painting. And with those supporting parts of the painting, you want to have interest. It's maybe not gonna, I'm gonna go back and use this as an example. I mean, partly it's because I was thinking about this when I was doing it. Um, so this supports the main attraction, supports the main attraction, but it acts on its own. And there's a lot of absolutely wonderful colors in there. And this one was not using scumbling as much as that one. The focus was really using more chunky colors. And you can do the same thing with that too. Just come in here, chunk away with colors. Chunk, gonna bring some of that same color down. I'm trying to keep in the same idea that I'm using over here. And I can just keep adding that chunk. And chunk away instead of just the light scumble. You want a real heavy duty mark. Oh, you know, I think I'm gonna throw in this guy right here so you can see that. And this is a more of an example of how you could use that and actually show up the shapes of your strokes. Again, here they're gradual, here they're not gradual. Let me throw in a light in here. I'm gonna throw in this yellow right here. Okay, so you get this lovely color interaction that's happening, all just based on that value bar we had of a color. So any questions on that? Where can people see this taking place? I'm gonna just push it back just a little bit here so I can see, talk to you guys.
Betsy, it's Deborah. I missed the beginning of it. Could you just explain again this whole thing that you just did?
Give a
Like-
synopsis of it? Yeah, sure.
Exactly. Yeah, give me a little,
Yeah, you're gonna get the video too. Just give me a minute because
yeah.
I'm just trying to. Okay, so basically what it is just talking about how we used compatible here, starting with the value of the paper, with the value of our first color. We kept these colors here. We used them for all three bars, but every time we moved, we made some sort of a change. Similar color, orange background of variations of orange here. This one, opposite color, but a brighter blue, closer in value to the original orange that we have here, which is like a muted mid-dark orange. So this one here, same exact colors. Then what we did is we're going for something that's darker. These are on the lighter end of the value bar. They fall really on, maybe this zone here. We wanted something that was darker that falls in this zone here. So what we've done is we've just started on a darker color. So it's showing you how same colors can look very different, but not just, I know I've showed this before. This one's really more about letting the color that's underneath show through. So that becomes part of the painting. And then the only other thing that I did, which you probably saw, was just a little bit of feathering, because if you wanted to get rid of that blue, and you don't get in there and use your fingers, use a tool, see how that works. So yeah, so that was a quick version of it. So I'm just going to,
Betsy, it's Lori.
yes, Lori,
How are you tonight?
very good.
Thank you.
I'm curious. I want to make sure I'm understanding that you start by looking at, say, for instance, you've got a photograph that you want to paint, and you've seen a spot that's kind of got a dark. You're looking at the values of a quiet spot,
Yes,
and it's either dark, light, or medium value. But you're also using certain colors throughout the painting. And now you're looking at how can I use these colors in this quiet area that has a, for instance, a dark value. Am I following that correctly?
yes, you are, thank you. That was a nice question with a synopsis all in one go, Lori. The
This is
idea is, a lot of times people say, I don't have that color. It's not as much as you don't have that color, you have to find compatible other colors to make it change the way it looks.
right. So,
And if we
and it all
laid
starts
these
with the
three things
values.
out, you would not think they were all the same colors that are layered on top. They are. They are just, well, this one here I added, I'm gonna make that clear. The bottom part here, I added two other colors. But if we look at those two, they change dramatically because of what's underneath it. This one even more so because it was really dark, and then we added two extra dark colors at the end.
Fascinating.
You know, so that, yeah, and you know, there's a photo over here, I forgot, let me pull this one up. Yeah, gosh. And this one here. This one's actually probably, I should have used this, you know, it's funny when you do things, you say, yeah, I should have used this one as an example too. Okay, this one's got lots of quiet areas in it. Okay. Holy moly, could that be boring? Okay. If you didn't take the time to look at like these little nuances where there's like slight changes of shadowy areas, ever so slight. Okay, in here, okay, you've got that darker area that's showing through. Quiet areas, okay? It's important to the painting because this is where you get this lovely zigzag that goes up with the ice that has, you know, frozen when the tide came in. So the reality of this quiet part here can have this sort of, not with these colors, with this sort of effect, whereas when you hit back here, you can use some of these same colors and you can have them in the darker areas. Okay, we could have a lighter color underneath for down here, darker color up here, use same colors up here, and more colors in there. I'm not saying you would only use the colors that are down here, but the reality of it is you can come in here and you can play around with the colors. One of the things you have to consider is this one here, we've got a lot of light areas. And in these light areas, those same colors can exist in some of these other little spots. Now, would I say this dark area right here, I'd use all exactly the same colors? No, but I would have this as an underpainting that's darker, underpainting that's darker, okay? And then depending on how much you want it to pop, and you know, you saw the one that I showed you where I was using, you know, really bright colors. And then you saw the one that I was using that was rather sedate colors, you know, it's more your local color. So in doing that, just try it. Try taking color that's here and moving it into a different spot that has a different underpainted color. The thing that you have to be careful of is as you're doing that, this dark shape right here needs darker colors on it. It's not going to take these colors here. It's these areas that are in here that are in between the two. That's where you can like bring in merge colors from up here and merge colors from down here into some of these little subtle shifting areas.
So
But
question,
yes,
if you were going to choose a color for underpainting on a sandy area, it wouldn't necessarily have to be a sand color,
correct.
but it would have to be something light in value.
Yes, you want to have it like value. So you could have, this is where the fun part comes, okay? Is you could do this and you can say, okay, and you're going to keep it, let's say, monochromatic. So you're going to have variation. This is a cold day. So you can go with a cool color like a blue, and you can say, okay, I'm going to have variations of blue values all underneath that whole thing. So the whole thing feels cool. You could say, yeah, but I really want it to have some, it's a sunny day. I want it to feel a little warm. Okay, use an alizarin crimson underneath it and use various values of alizarin crimson. And then you can start playing with the colors and see what does one look like if it has underpainting monochromatically with various shades of a cool blue. And what does it look like if it's got monochromatic and it's got the whole underpainting in various values of a cool red, which is alizarin crimson.
Wow.
Okay?
Very
Or
cool.
you could get in there and you can say, oh yeah, but I don't want to do a monochromatic. I want to have one color for this and one color for this. Well, have your alizarin crimson down here. Maybe have, I don't know, you could go anywhere from a red violet to a blue green up there. So you could play around with your colors and see what happens. These are like little study sort of things, and see what happens when the color palette you're working on winds up being put on these different colors. And that's the exciting thing about pastels. We're not mixing in a separate area. We are optically mixing. We are mixing so people will walk up to it and say, no, I do not believe that is the same color. Well, yes, it is. But it's the optical part. It's the beauty of the type of marks, chunky marks. Over here, we were doing, well, the feathering up on top, and we are doing more scumbling here. All this sort of thing just helps to create that sense of shifting values within an object instead of a flat surface that winds up looking like, like you have a flat sky behind it. It winds up looking like if someone pulled a curtain down. Put a variety of colors in that sky. Just keep that value similar and have it change ever so slightly as the sky then moves up into the higher atmosphere. Or the field of, a marsh, a field of grass, a field of flowers. As that field progresses into the background, those colors are going to shift. And you can do it gradually with a palette, but also with whatever colors you've got underneath to help it.
That is very cool.
Isn't
Thank
it
you.
cool? Well, go play with pastels. Give it a try. All different colors. And the colors, if you don't want to tone a whole load of paper, but truthfully, this paper, the art spectrum, anytime I do a study on this, and I'm not saving it, not a study, and an exercise I'm showing for this, I go wash it off at the sink. I lie it flat. Granted, I have to be really circumspect about what painting I'm going to put on top of it, but I'm not going to waste the paper. This is not going in the trash. I'll just get it off there and I'll just paint over it. That'll work out fine.
Hey, Betsy,
Yes?
maybe you could do in one of your classes that photograph using this technique.
Well, actually, I hadn't thought to do that in this one, but maybe this one would work. The open studios that I'm doing now, I started it a couple of, I don't know how long ago I started it. Whatever I do in the open studio, I am bringing some, if not all of that, into the paint along, so that you can see what it's like.
Oh,
And then
oh.
if you want to paint along, it's an instructional paint along. I'm giving suggestions, advice, yada yada, if you haven't taken one. So then you get to practice it in a paint along. So
Oh,
yeah,
that's great.
I will consider that painting.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I'd like that. It would really make it
Yeah.
cement. I
Yeah.
need some cement with this one.
Good. Any other questions or comments?
I think it's a beautiful abstract, what you did.
Oh, yeah, it is kind of fun when you just play around. Yeah,
Right.
the lighting on me is all goofy because I wanted to have that. But yeah, it is. You know what? You're right. You start playing around with colors, and that idea of just creating for the sake of creating, not for a specific outcome the way I normally do. Yeah, that'd be great. Do that. What fun. Your surfaces will make a difference. So check your surfaces first. Art Spectrum works out very well. Pastel mat, you know I love. It's one of my favorite papers. It does hold the stroke, so it doesn't blend quite as easy unless you get a lot more layers on it, which actually works out well for this because you're not gonna get the blending. Those strokes are gonna show. Our UArt great paper, a little bit more blendy, but that's okay. It'll still take the strokes. In all three of them, well, this always comes toned, but you can get white and tone it yourself if you wanted to start with a color, or even just take and do oh, that would be fun. You just take a sheet of paper and just make like a little squiggle on it, and then do each little section a different color, and then see what happens. Anyway, any other questions? Okay, super. So the paint along is in 2 weeks, and that is 5 to 7 when the video comes out of this. I'll be sending it over the weekend. You'll get the information if you're interested in painting along and doing something like this. That's great. If not, you'll have the video. You can watch this again, come up with some of your own ideas. And I do have a beginner workshop at the end of this month too. So if if you know someone who's interested in taking pastels, Falmouth Art Center, having a beginner workshop, and that was in my last newsletter, the date. It's on a Saturday. I believe it's 9:30 till 3:30. Okay?
Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks so much, everybody.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Okay,
Thank
bye-bye.
Thank you, Beth.